Hello, ghouls and ghosts, and welcome back to the Scary Story Corner, where I, Sweethart, your host, will read scary stories for your enjoyment. Now please, find your seats, get comfortable, and try not to get too scared. It started when we called out to the stars, into the darkness. Felt so small, tumbling through the vast emptiness while clinging to the skin of the world, and without a single reason why. We were curious, yes, but ultimately, I think we were just terribly frightened. And we were young, so young. We were children, and like a lonely lost child, we did everything we could think of to make it stop. We did what we thought we had to make the universe make sense. We called for help. For years we scanned the sky for a sign. We sent signals to the stars and the great beyond darkness. Are we alone? But the skies were quiet, always so quiet, leaving us to our own makings. Praying children never cease, and neither did we. We sent calls into every corner of space for decades. We refused to believe no one was out there. They had to be. And yet for some unknown reason, they never answered us. Everyone remembers when that changed. They think it responded to the Arecibo message from 1974. The response to the Arecibo message was received almost 3 months ago in 2 separate parts. The first part of the message was received at Hat Creek Radio Observatory in California. The Allen telescope array picked up what sounded like static interference that continued on for over an hour. It consisted of unintelligible screeching and buzzing sounds that continued without pause for a whole hour. The meaning of this message was never discovered, if it had one. The only thing we knew was the original signal in this came somewhere in the Hercules constellation near Messier 13. As soon as the signal stopped, the message began. We made contact that day, and we were asked a question. Who is there? It came not through radio, but a voice. A voice inside all of our heads. Asked the question to all of us. I heard it. My wife heard it. The young heard it. The old heard it. Even the deaf heard it. Everyone, everywhere, heard this voice whisper that great question in their heads in every language on earth. I remember it too clearly. It asked in that familiar yet indescribable voice. It's always there in my mind. It was like one of my own thoughts had gone rogue and had decided to speak directly to me. The world seemed to stop as everyone listened to what came next. Where are you? The heavy question seemed to linger in our minds for hours afterwards, and then for days, and then for weeks. That day changed everything. There were doubters from the beginning, and the holy ones who claimed that God had spoken to all of us, and that it was time to repent. There were those who claimed they'd heard nothing, and those who had claimed that the aliens had given them their own secret messages. And of course, there were those who truly believed that we had been contacted for the first time by extraterrestrial race like us. One ready to communicate, ready to lead us out of the dark. We were wrong. We never made contact with alien life, at least nothing comprehensible or discernible to human understanding. Stars are vast, and in their vastness, our voices had touched the ears of something truly incomprehensible, something hungry and malevolent. Voice. We realized our mistake when the ground started to groan. Beneath our feet, everywhere, the ground seemed to moan. A muffled sound shook through the dust and dirt below us. No one knew what was causing it. At least, not until the calls started coming in. The graveyards were screaming. All at once, the dead started to scream. Every deceased man, woman, child was turning in their graves. All the animals did so too. Every cat, dog, everything that had walked this earth. Cries of ancient whales shook the seas, and the shrill shrieking of birds echoed in the forest. The caskets shook, and the morgues howled. The voices stopped altogether, in an instant, leaving the world in an amplified silence. In their absence, a new sound filled the air. The voice returned. I hear you. It came as a whisper from behind, an ominous yet oddly playful presence that felt so close, but was truly still so far away. It let us breathe in the silence for a minute before it made us a promise. It was a promise we all knew it was going to be true. I am coming. The voice was gone, and the air again was filled with screams. This time, they were from the living. After the voice had gone, we were left to our own devices. Millions panicked, and rightfully so, as chaos took hold of the streets. Many died in the violence and the gunfire of that night. They would be known as the raptured long before, and the rest of us would be condemned. We could only wait. The screaming dead was only the first of the side effects that was felt by the voice. The closer it got, the more we felt it. That first night, after the screaming, we noticed the stars bleed for the first time. A section of the western sky had turned black, blacker than night. It was only truly visible because of the ring of stars around it. The light from those stars had turned red, and they seemed to bleed across the sky like food coloring dropped in water. Their light swirled and flowed all around the edge of some unseen mass. I knew then that I was staring at the face of the voice. Our scientists claimed that nothing was there, and that their radars and scanners always came up empty. Their telescopes could see nothing but darkness in the section of space. However, the proof was right there in front of us. As every night the ring of darkness got wider and more stars bled in the sky. We watched it come. As each night passed, the black spot would widen and more stars would distort and bleed around it. During the day, a new hell would greet us. The side effects worsened. The day always brought something new. I'm sure most of what happened will go untold and unknown. The animals started disappearing. All of them. No tracks, traces, or bodies were left behind. Pets would run away, some violently so. They all retreated, never to be seen again. The forests were abandoned, the oceans empty, the air silent. The world seemed empty and lonely. They left like water receding from the shore just before the tsunami breaks. One day, about 2 weeks ago, scientists tried to talk to the voice again. They hoped, perhaps, to reason with it. They told it about what was happening in our world and asked it questions. The scientists begged. It didn't speak. When asked what the voice sent a response. The next night, the skies lit up with streaks of fire. It was alight for hours, blazed with orange and red. We realized the effects until the next day, when the televisions turned to static and the telephones refused to work. We had sat, watching, as all of the satellites were knocked out of the heavens. After the reports came rumors and rumblings, sanity a thing of the past, The air chilled and weighed us down. The voice was nearly here and everyone felt it. It rained for a week after the satellites fell. The rain was salty and mirrored an unknown filth that turned the grass black. Maybe the satellites tracked something back in with them when they hit the sky. No one knew for sure. All we know is that it fell from the clouds black as charcoal and blotted out the sun like liquid ash. Darkness fell upon us for days. When the clouds went away, the skies were empty. There were no clouds, yet the sky hung low and gray. If the sun was anywhere in the sky, it never made itself known. Even it had abandoned us. Each day grew slowly darker and darker until night and day became almost the same thing. Some people claim later that they'd seen things in the dark, creatures with gangly limbs and crooked faces lurking in the corner of their vision. They were tall, white creatures that looked molted or rotten through their transparent skin. Appearances would last just for a second or two before vanishing without a trace. Some believe this was the first step in an alien invasion, but the rest of us didn't know what to think. We just knew it was not something that was simple or benign. They must have been hallucinations, just more madness to endure, but ultimately as harmless as anything else, as harmless as the screams of the dead, missing animals, and the dying sky. Appearances slowly increased in duration and number. I think everyone saw them once at least, but I don't think I saw a single person would ever think that they were truly here. They never touched nor spoke to anyone, and they certainly never harmed anyone. Most who got good looks at them described them mournful or sorrowful. Some even claimed the creatures watched over them at night, and others even claimed to have seen the creatures as if they were sorry for them. One claimed to have even seen a creature on the ground, hands clasped above its head, as if he was praying for us. Prayer was no help. The churches and places of worship that had divided us for so long failed to bring hope in any in this end. The voice let them pray and beg for a while, but just days ago the voice ended it all. No one questioned how, for at this point nothing happened surprise. But on the final day, all books of worship burned. Every Bible, every Koran, everything. People rushed to their centers of faith, but found no solace. The churches and temples had suffered the same fate, if not worse. The people were left abandoned by their greatest hopes. There were rumors of churches all over the world, with walls formed from the bodies of those who had sought refuge. They were merged to the walls, stuck to them like flies in a trap. They died still pleading for hope, but they were beyond God's help. The rest of us learned to stop begging. We waited. The final message came. From beyond the sky, fell upon us. Voice echoed and spoke the simple truth. I am here. There is a darkness beyond the horizon, the likes of which I doubt has ever been seen. It brings with it the screams of countless souls, and it moves fast. The stars are dying now, and I know they'll never be seen again. The light is dying so fast. I leave this not as a warning. No, it's far too late for that. Instead, consider this the last realization, the last humanity will ever know. For we used to wonder whether or not we were alone and lost, whether or not we were safe and hidden. The universe is infinite, and our understanding was significantly more finite. We should have never beckoned to the darkness. Instead, we should have clung to the light and closed our eyes every time we turned to the void. As the final minutes approach, I hold one final truth to be certain. I now know why the skies are always so quiet. I don't work for NASA. I'm a lowly office tech at a company affiliated with NASA. We store data off-site, mostly concerning their many unmanned mystery missions to the moon, including the countless ones that took place between the Apollo launches. There are regular landings, even today. As you can imagine, they were not on the books. Still, we are a necessary facet of the Space Administration's delicate infrastructure. Now that you're up to speed with where I work, I can tell you about the room. Room 371 to be precise. The Overseer's office. It always had an air of mystery about it. I and other staff members had been inside before, tasked with leaving behind flash drives filled with sensitive information for the Overseer to upload to their database. You see, the sole computer in that room is an offline archive containing almost every one of NASA's dirty little secrets. Stuff that we can't risk getting out in an event of a data breach. If anyone were to hack our online mainframe, they would only find decoy files outlining pieces of data that have already been in the public eye. Most of the information I dealt with amounted to mundane statistical analysis. The real interesting, controversial stuff was sent directly to the Overseer, bypassing the prying eye of entry-level employment. That brings us to yesterday. It was a normal drop-off assignment. Bring the flash drive to room 371, leave it on the desk, and shut the door on your way out. I'd done this countless times before. This time, however, was a little different. After placing the drive on the desk, I noticed a faint glow on the wall behind it. The computer was on. This was strange. It was always shut down by the Overseer after a data dump. The only time I had ever seen it turned on were the days while he was still in there working. I admit, my curiosity got the better of me. With a slight spike in adrenaline, I walked around the desk and sat in the chair, ready to take back at least one mystery to the hive mind on the main floor. The convenience of this moment cannot be understated. I later discovered that the Overseer was sick and had rushed to the bathroom, where he remained for at least 40 minutes. Not only was the computer on, it was unlocked. Even our personal workstations required a series of passwords that changed daily. Passwords we had spent the first 10 minutes of every given workday decrypting. This was the one and only chance I had to placate my curiosity and dig for the buried treasures of NASA. I knew there just had to be something in the confines of our database that would elicit a gasp or a mouth drop, something that I could remember for the rest of my years. While sitting at the desk, my heart pounding at the thoughts of the Overseer's return, I noticed the computer was calibrated just like the rest of our PCs. Because of this, I knew just what folders to open and what digital stones to turn on my hunt for secrets. Most files were your run-of-the-mill storage vessels, data pertaining to the boring truths of the trade, statistics and physics, predictions. After a few minutes of searching, I almost called it quits. But one document caught my eye. It was titled Project Burial at Sea. This was what I wanted, a classified NASA project, never before released to the public. In this moment, secrets were revealed to me. ones I soon wished I had never unearthed. As is common with these types of documents, the jargon was very straightforward and low on description. As such, I had to piece together bits of information to form a clear picture of the proposal and subsequent missions that apparently started at the turn of our current century. What I discovered did indeed elicit a gasp. It also made my skin crawl. Project Burial at Sea was, ironically enough, a fail-safe against information leaks. It implemented the pre-existing infrastructures of NASA's unmanned missions to dispose of cracks in the system. That is, individuals are likely to come clean about privileged information. You heard that right. Individuals. NASA was killing off would-be whistleblowers to protect their assets. The initial proposal called to send bodies into deep space, but too many unknown variables presented itself. If even one probe was knocked back to Earth by an asteroid or unforeseen space event, the entire operation would be done for, especially if it landed in enemy territory. At that point, another country could use it as blackmail on our governments for aid or financial gain. Burying the bodies on the moon prevented this and eliminated all potential evidence tying anyone to the crime. The people who vanished made up a small portion of NASA, so the ratio of missing persons in relation to their workforce was barely disturbed, deflecting any potential suspicion. After a rigorous sterilization procedure, the bodies were stuffed into hollow spaces of previously unmanned probes. Once they reach the lunar surface, they are collected by rovers, of which there are many more than you're aware of, and buried in the craters of a specific section of the moon's dark side. In other words, mass graves. The rovers later collected samples to determine the long-term effects of the soil on human decomposition. This was not the purpose of the project, just added benefit. I was floored. This document was not what I expected. I couldn't believe this sort of thing was happening in our country, and at NASA of all places, an organization that I was involved in. After closing the file and navigating back to the home screen, I left room 371 and shut the door, my worldview shattered. Upon returning to my workstation, my coworker Bill questioned me. "Jack, where were you? Did you hear the overseer wrenching in the bathroom? Poor guy has that stomach bug that's been going around." I politely nodded, but offered no response to the initial inquiry. Still shaken, Bill buried his face back into his work. Eventually, the overseer returned, the sound of room 371 creaking iron door slamming shut behind him as he resumed work at his desk. Beads of sweat formed on my brow as I wondered if he would notice something amiss, and I know. Pursuing my archives. My heart began racing as the paranoia took over. I had to tell someone about my discovery. Perhaps I misinterpreted the information. Maybe Bill could put my mind at ease. He was a nice guy, not the type to break a promise or betray a fellow worker. "Bill," I whispered, "have you heard anything about NASA sending corpses to the moon?" He stared at me for a moment, an overly serious expression painted across his face. Then he laughed. "Jack, you card, where do you come up with this stuff anyway? You should write a book." Without so much as a sound to alert his arrival, the overseer put his hand on my shoulder. I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Jack, I've been meaning to talk to you. A big promotion in the works. Meet me in my office in 10 minutes. With that, he loosened his grip and traveled back to room 371. My eyes widened and my heart sank. Bill noticed something was wrong. What's wrong, Jack? You look like you've seen a ghost. Promotions are a big deal around here. Only one every few months or so? Lisa was promoted last year and went on to supervise one of the unmanned probes that launched. Haven't you seen her? I turned to Bill and met his gaze. Bill, it's been nice working with you. He smiled before turning back to his computer. You too, Jack. 10 torturous minutes came and went. I hesitantly made my way to room 371, slowly opened the door. The overseer gestured me to come in. Have a seat, Jack, and closed the door. I unwillingly obliged. The thought of making a run for it crossed my mind, but I knew the security detail at the front gate would stop me. Drawing attention to myself would only serve to expedite my demise. So, what is this about? I asked, my breathing now labored and sporadic. Like I said before, it's a promotion. NASA is recruiting from its affiliate outfits to supervise some of their unmanned launches. You've been selected. I tilted my head back in disbelief. But, sir, why me? I haven't done anything to warrant a promotion to my knowledge. Grin. That's where you're wrong, Jack. We've been watching you. We know what you did. Can't deny it any longer. With a wicked smile, he stood up from his desk and walked over to me, his arms outstretched in my direction. His shadow covered the entire room, or at least it seemed that way in the moment. Without realizing it, I had backed myself into a corner, almost cowering in fear. That's when the door opened and my co-workers flooded into the room. Surprise! I stood upright, shocked. What's going on? Bill responded, Don't you know what day it is, Jack? The overseer pointed his calendar. It was September 18th, which, according to them, was my hire date. It all made sense now. It was a ruse, a practical joke at my expense. The overseer sometimes did this on workplace anniversaries, but not for many years at this point, and I've never had an elaborate one to this extent. I didn't realize what day it was until they pointed it out. Did you really think I would leave my computer on, unattended? Bill chimed in. Bodies can't decompose on the moon, Jack. There's no air. They let out hearty laughs. I laughed too, thoroughly relieved. The rest of the afternoon was nice. After all was said and done, we returned to work, invigorated by the positive surge of energy and morale. After finishing my leftover tasks, I left with a smile on my face, happy to be beside Earth, alive and well. This mood would follow me all the way home, but I wasn't alone. When I parked in my driveway, someone pulled up behind me. The overseer stepped out of the car and greeted me with a friendly wave. Jack, can we talk? House calls were unorthodox in our line of work, but not unheard of. Of course, Coulter. Please, come in. He followed me inside and joined me in the living room. I sat down, but he paced at the fireplace, looking over my family pictures on the mantel. You know, what Bill said was true. Bodies don't compose on the moon. That bit was added by NASA. They put falsehoods in all of their classified documents. It's another failsafe. A detail they can point to in case of a leak to make them seem illegitimate. I was utterly confused. I'm not sure I follow. What are you getting at exactly? He turned to me, a stern look painted across his face. It's all real, Jack. The dead bodies, the craters, everything. You should have never sat at my desk. I chuckled. Come on, Coulter. The joke's over. No need to drag it out. He wasn't laughing. This is no joke. You were hired in July, not September. I sent out a last-minute memo to everyone in an attempt to avert your suspicion. Here, we can discuss things privately. You're funny. You're forgetting about my wife and daughter. A smirk touched the side of his cheeks. He touched me an envelope. Inside were photos of my wife picking up my daughter from school. My heart sank. What the hell is this, Coulter? Are you following my family around? We've intercepted them. Let's say they'll be getting home late tonight. The gravity of the situation began to sink in. If everything I saw was indeed real, then I now was a target. I would soon become the next NASA casualty buried at sea. If I didn't escape and get help, Charlotte and Leslie would never be saved. My eyes darted to the door. Coulter noticed. I wouldn't run off if I were you. I didn't come alone. My blood boiling. I was tempted to lash out in anger. Don't worry. They're safe. I remained silent, but livid. There are things in this universe you can't begin to understand. Things not only above your pay grade, but above your understanding. Things human words could never hope to describe. Human? I asked, perplexed by the wording. Yes, Jack. Let me show you. What happened next was enough to put my mouth on the floor. Using his right hand in a circular motion in the air, Coulter opened up a portal. A fucking portal. One that seemed to connect to my living room, to the moon. I could even see Earth off in the distance. What in God's name is that? I shouted. Come on, Jack. Get a closer look. As his hostage, I had no choice but to humor his demands. Upon stepping up to the void, still dazzled, I saw it. A crater, filled to the brim with corpses. Why are you showing me this? I said in a shaky voice. Just watch, Jack. I turned back to the scene and noticed something at the edge of the crater. 3 shadowy figures, far too tall to be human. They extended their arms, and a glow rained down from the space above the crater. The corpses, they moved. I watched in horror as the bodies were reanimated. But these were not living things. They were shells controlled by a puppeteer, bent to its sinister will. The 3 shadows became one and formed an archway. A blinding brightness poured out from within it. One by one, the corpses walked into the light until, finally, the crater was emptied. Then, the light dissipated, and the shadows spun in unison, taking off at great speed into the abyss of the deep space. With another wave of his arm, Coulter closed the portal. I was speechless. You see, Jack, Project Burial at Sea is more than a safety measure. It's a necessary sacrifice to them. So, all the bodies? I asked. No. Only some would-be whistleblowers. The rest, John Does and John Danes, left at morgues across the country with no relatives to name them. Where did they take them? I asked. To the place where they live. There they are forced to build, stuck in the space between life and death for all of eternity. It's a terrible fate. We would all be right there right now, if not for the deal we struck back in 1947. These creatures don't bode well to our atmosphere. To placate their every need to keep them from developing a technology capable of mitigating the effect of our air as on their bodies and spacecraft. I couldn't believe it. Everything I knew up until that point was a lie. Coulter walked to the door. I like you, Jack. That's why I'm telling you all of this. I want to keep you on. You're a good man. And a good worker. If you don't want to end up like that poor soul as a hulk in space rock, you'll keep your mouth shut. I heard the car pull up outside. Looks like your wife and daughter are home. We just took them out for ice cream. Before closing the door on his way out, the overseer turned back with a smile. See you on Monday, Jack. Thank you again for coming to the Scary Story Corner. I hope not everyone was too scared to go home. Be careful. and stay safe. You never know what's lying in the night.